There are days when you open your eyes, but your heart doesn't want to wake up anymore. Days when you look in the mirror and quietly ask yourself, why should I keep going? Exhausted. There are mornings when the alarm rings, but your body has no strength left to rise. Not because you're lazy, but because the weight you've been carrying has crushed you for far too long. There are moments when you've tried so hard that even you don't understand how you're still standing. Trying to take care of your family, trying to keep your job, trying to build a future from nothing. Trying not to collapse, even you've broken inside more times than you can count. And then one day, you whisper to yourself, I can't do this anymore. You don't say it out loud, but you feel it deeply. The burden is too heavy. The loneliness is too long. The disappointments are too many. And your hope has become thin fragile. Ready to tear. The worst part isn't that you're tired. The worst part is that you feel like there's no reason left to continue. But here's the truth most people never tell you. Your life often changes at the exact moment you feel like giving up, because when everything begins to fall apart, when you feel like you're standing at the edge, that is the moment your path can shift. There is a simple truth. People only truly transform when the pain becomes enough to push them forward, and right at that breaking point lies a single word, a word that rebuilt millions of lives in Japan, a spirit that helped an entire nation rise from the ashes. Today I want to share that word with you. But before we step into that story, let me ask you, what is the struggle that makes you feel like giving up? Share it in the comments below. I read as many comments I can, and I want you to know, you are not alone in your battle. And if you believe that life can still change, people can become stronger than they imagine, and today's pain is not the end, then I invite you to subscribe to the Life Philosophy channel. So each day you gain a new perspective, a new story, and a new reason to keep going. Because your story isn't over. And this journey is only beginning. The spirit of Ganbaru, a single word that kept millions from collapsing. In Japanese culture, there are words that sound ordinary at first, but inside them lies an entire philosophy, carved through centuries of hardship and resilience. And among those words, one became the spine that held Japan together during the doriad of its history. That word is Ganbaru. At first glance, Ganbaru might look like the simple phrase, try your best. But in truth, it is nothing like the kind of try you usually hear. It's not a soft encouragement, not a polite sentence to make someone feel better. Not the kind of effort you give for a few days and then quit. Ganbaru is a promise a person makes to themselves. A promise that says, no matter how hard it gets, I will not give up. No matter how painful it is, I will keep going. No matter how hopeless everything feels, I will stand up again. And even when the entire world is against me, I will not surrender. This spirit was so powerful that the Japanese believe it was what helped them survive after World War I. A time when their nation had nothing left, no buildings, no food, no certainty, no hope. Yet Ganbaru. They persisted when their cities were nothing but rubble. They persisted when they didn't know what tomorrow would bring. They persisted when their hope was shattered again and again. And through Ganbaru they rose, slowly but surely, painfully but steadily, failing but beginning again, each person doing their part. Each day contributing one small effort, until an entire nation turned devastation into strength. Ganbaru isn't the power of heroes, it's the power of ordinary people. People like you, people who get tired, people who feel overwhelmed, people who sometimes want to let everything fall apart, but who still hold on even if just barely. And the truth is, you've been Ganbaru far more times than you realize. You kept going to work even when pressure suffocated you. You swallowed your tears just to keep your family at peace. You pushed forward even when no one believed in you. You stood back up after failures that no one else even saw. You are not weak. You are far stronger than most people think, and far stronger than you think. Ganbaru does require you to always be positive, or always be strong, or always be okay. It only demands one thing. Do not give up, even if you only have 1% of your strength left. Even if your heart is aching. Even if your legs are shaking. Even if the world turns its back on you. As long as you don't give up, life will still open a path forward. And to truly understand the power of Ganbaru, not in theory but in real life, I want to tell you a story. The story of a 13-year-old boy, fatherless, hungry, exhausted, carrying his entire family on his shoulders, a boy who found his way at the very moment he thought he had lost everything. The story of Kenji. Part at the beginning of the story. Japan 1940 and a boy named Kenji, 2 years after World War I. Japan at that time was nothing like the modern, shining country you see today. It was a nation completely crushed, Cities were nothing but burnt walls and ashes. Homes destroyed, streets turned into fields of rubble. The economy collapsed. Jobs were non-existent. Food was scarce, people were starving. Those who survived were simply the lucky ones. Those who did to remain beneath the ruins, nameless and forgotten. In that harsh reality, in a poor, isolated village far from the cities and far from any help, lived a 18-year-old boy named Kenji. Kenji lived with his mother, his 2 younger brothers, and his elderly grandmother. His father had died in the war, leaving the family with nothing but grief and poverty. And from the moment his father was gone, Kenji, though barely a man, became the man of the house. But how can you be the man of the house when you have absolutely nothing? No job, no connections. Every morning began with an empty stomach. Every night ended with the same fear. What will we eat tomorrow? How do I feed my mother? What about my little brothers? What about grandma? Kenji everything he possibly could. He woke up before sunrise. He worked in the fields. He begged for day labor jobs, carried heavy loads, clean swept. Anything anyone would let him do, even if the only payment was a bowl of rice. But it was never enough. Some nights the family only had thin porridge. Kenji would see his mother quietly wiping her tears. He'd hear his little brother's stomachs growling, and the worst pain was hunger. It was the shame of a young man who felt he couldn't provide for his family. Deep down, Kenji blamed himself every single day. I should take care of them, but I can't. Maybe I really am a failure. Kenji wasn't lazy. He was irresponsible. He had discipline. He worked hard. He earned every small coin he could. But the world around him was too harsh, and the effort of one teenage boy meant nothing against the brutal reality of post-war Japan. Then one freezing winter morning, Kenji walked to a nearby farm hoping to find work. He stood there, hands numb from the cold, face pale from the wind. But the farm owner only looked at him and said, "I have nothing for you, boy. I can barely pay the workers I already have." Kenji lowered his head. He didn't argue. He simply turned around and walked home along the cold dirt path, dust rising behind each tired step. He went home empty-handed, and this time his heart was empty too. Kenji sat down on the ground in front of his house, staring at the gray sky above, and he cried. Not the soft cry of sadness, but the cry of someone who has carried too much for too long. I can't take this anymore. I tried, I swear I tried, but I can't do it. His voice trembled like a thread about to snap. It was the kind of moment where a person can lose all faith in themselves. The kind of moment that, without a miracle, can change someone's life forever. But in the worst possible way, and yet right at that moment, when Kenji was breaking, something unexpected happened. A meeting that would shift the direction of his entire life. A person who appeared exactly when he needed it most. And from here the story begins to change. Part B. The moment of giving up, the meeting that changed everything. Kenji sat in front of his house, his hands limp at his sides, his eyes hollow as he stared up at the cold, gray sky. His breathing was shaky as every inhale tightened something deep inside his chest. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was collapse. He wasn't crying because he was weak. He was crying because he had tried for far too long, tried until his spirit simply had nothing left to stand up with. In the sharp winter wind, Kenji whispered, barely audible, "I'm not strong enough, I have nothing left." He pulled his knees to his chest, bowed his head, and let the tears fall onto the cracked dirt. For the first time in his life, Kenji felt completely alone, utterly powerless, utterly defeated, utterly invisible. And if no one had happened to walk by that moment, Kenji's life might have taken a very different turn. A darker, colder path with no light at all. But life is strange. It often sends us a spark of hope at the exact moment we think we're about to disappear from this world. And Kenji's spark arrived in the form of an old man. A slow, steady figure approached him. Hands covered in calluses, a slightly bent back shaped by years of labor. But footsteps firm, as if he had weathered storms far greater than this. The old man stopped in front of Kenji and gently asked, "Are you all right, young man?" Kenji quickly wiped his tears, forcing a weak smile. "Yes, sir, I'm just a little tired." The old man tilted his head, looking straight into Kenji's eyes. A gaze so deep that Kenji felt he could hide anything. "Tired, or have you already given up?" Kenji said nothing. The question struck exactly where it hurt most. After a quiet moment, the old man spoke again. "You're looking for work, aren't you?" Kenji nodded, though his voice was barely a whisper. "No one will hire me." The old man looked at the frail boy in front of him, then said something completely unexpected. "I have a small carpentry shop in the next town. It's not big, not fancy, but it's real work. I can't pay much, but there's food. If you want it, start tomorrow." Those words were like a tiny flame sparking in a room full of darkness. Kenji looked up, his eyes filled with a mix of doubt, hope, and fear. "But can I really do it? I've never worked with wood before." The old man smiled, a smile full of experience, understanding, and the kindness of someone who had survived many storms himself. "No one is born knowing. The only question is, do you want to try?" Kenji swallowed hard, a warmth spreading inside him, a feeling he had felt in a long time, the feeling of being believed in. He bowed deeply. "Yes, I want to try. I'll take the job." The old man extended his hand. "My name is Teda. We begin tomorrow morning." Kenji sprayed down that cold, hopeless morning, opened a door he never expected. Not a door to money or luck, but a door leading to the first true teacher of his life. And from that moment on, Kenji's journey of Ganbaru, the journey of refusing to give up, had truly begun. Part Born. The painful first days, Kenji's first lesson in Ganbaru. The next morning, while the mist was still clinging to the trees, Kenji arrived at Teda's workshop. It was a small place on the side of a dirt road, filled with the faint scent of fresh wood and the echo of tools somewhere in the early cold air. There was nothing fancy about the workshop, just a few old tables, worn-out tools, and the skilled hands of an aging craftsman who had lived through more storms than he ever spoke about. Kenji stood at the entrance and bowed deeply. "Good morning, sir." Teda smiled wearily. Yoji nodded, not because he felt confident, but because he needed this job with every ounce of hope he had left. Day 1. Pain that made him want to walk away. Kenji had never done carpentry before. He didn't know how to saw wood, how to plane a board, how to hold a tool properly, and his body, chum-ed to simple farm work, was immediately crushed by the demands of carpentry. Sawing one piece of wood, his hands were bored. Planing his shoulders felt like they were tearing apart. Lifting a timber plank, his back felt like it might snap. By noon, his palms were split open in several places, blood seeping into the grain of the wood. But Kenji didn't complain, didn't cry, didn't ask for rest. He just kept working. Teda stood in the corner silently watching. His back was slightly bent, but his eyes were sharp, the eyes of someone who had lived long enough to recognize true effort when he saw it. Day 3. Pain still there, but so was he by the third day. Kenji's hands were swollen and raw, the wounds still stinging, yet he arrived at the workshop even earlier than Teda. The old man looked at him and asked gently, "How are your hands?" Kenji forced a smile. "I can handle it, sir," not because it didn't hurt, but because pain was no longer a reason to stop. Teda nodded. He did praise him. He did make a big deal out of it, but in the corner of his smile there was a quiet acknowledgement. 1 week later, a silent transformation. After 7 days, Kenji was no longer the confused boy who had first stepped into the workshop. He was starting to understand wood. The sound of the saw, the vibration of the planer, the way the material responded to pressure. Sometimes Teda corrected his posture. Sometimes he tapped on the table, signaling a mistake. Sometimes he stood behind Kenji, placed a hand on his shoulder and said, "Slow rush, wood dust like impatience." And Kenji listened. At the end of the week, as they sat drinking hot tea in the cold winter breeze, Teda set his cup down and asked, "Kenji, do you know what Ganbaru means?" Kenji shook his head. He had heard the word before, but never understood its essence. Teda looked out toward the doorway, where the last rays of sunlight were hitting piles of sawdust and scattered wood shavings. Ganbaru isn't just effort. It means giving everything you have even when you feel like you have nothing left. It means persisting even when no one believes in you. It means standing up, even when your heart is trembling. Kenji listened, each word settling to him like pieces of a puzzle he had been missing. Teda continued, voice slow but firm. "After the war, everyone lost something. I did too. My home, my family, my work, everything. But I chose Ganbaru. I chose to rebuild little by little. And that's the only reason I'm still here." Then he turned to Kenji, looking straight into his tired, wounded eyes. "And you can do the same." Those simple words, neither dramatic nor poetic, hit Kenji deeper than anything he had heard in years. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he wasn't a failure. He was simply someone who was hurting but still had a chance to rise. Those early days were only the beginning. The challenges ahead would be even harder, heavier, more exhausting, and at times overwhelming. But those challenges would also shape Kenji into someone he never imagined he could become. Someone who'd learn the meaning of Ganbaru, not from a dictionary, but from his own sweat, blood, and tears. Part Num, the greatest test of Kenji's life. 6 months passed faster than Kenji expected. Every day in the workshop was a small battle. His hands bled, then hardened. His body broke down, then grew stronger. His mind grew tired, then more resilient. Kenji was no longer the boy sitting on his porch, defeated by hunger and poverty. He began to understand the soul of the wood, the grain, the sound of the saw, the subtle crack that revealed the material's nature. He learned to stand with purpose, breathe with control, and most importantly, he learned to endure as naturally as he breathed. Ted saw the transformation, but life has a peculiar habit. It always tests you the hardest right after you finally learn how to stand. One morning, everything changed. Ted began coughing more. Then one day he collapsed right inside the workshop. Fortunately, it wasn't life-threatening, but the doctor insisted he must rest for several weeks. No heavy labor, no workshop, no exceptions. And so Ted called Kenji over, speaking in a weak, wavering voice. "The workshop in leaving it to you for now." Kenji froze. "I'm too young. I barely know anything yet, it'll ruin everything." Ted looked straight into his eyes, a gaze both stern and gentle, filled with the wisdom of someone who had lived through deep suffering. "If I didn't trust you, I would say this. Kenji, you can do it. I know you can, but the belief of others isn't always enough to silence the fears inside a young man's heart." When Ted walked away with his medicine and warm blankets, Kenji stood alone in the workshop, the space suddenly feeling too big, too quiet, too heavy. For the first time, his loneliness returned, but this time it cut deeper. Day one alone, the fear returns. A major client arrived, needing a large, complex table. The most difficult project Kenji had ever seen. Just looking at the sketch made Kenji's chest tighten. "How can I do this? Tada isn't here, I'm just a nobody," but the deposit was paid. The client believed in the workshop. And now Kenji carried that responsibility. He began working. Wrong chiseling slipped, joining uneven sand corner. Every mistake sent a tremor up his arms. That night the workshop was silent. Only the cold wind outside and the dim glow of the oil lamp keeping him company. Kenji sank to the floor, leaning against the wall, exhausted to the point he could barely lift his arms. He whispered, "I'm going to ruin everything. I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough." That voice was familiar. It was the same voice he had heard on the day he nearly gave up on life. The day he met Teda, and in that moment, as if stirred from deep inside him, a memory resurfaced. Pain is where you grow. In pain we rise. Kenji opened his eyes. It was past midnight. His hands throbbed. His face was streaked with dried sweat. One breath, then drew the measurements. He planed the wood again. He rejoined the pieces. If he failed, he repeated. If he was tired, he continued. It wasn't just work anymore. It was Ganbaru, the will to persist even when your entire being trembles. Delivery day, the moment that changed his life. When the client arrived, Kenji stood off to the side, heart pounding. The man ran his fingers across the tabletop, checked the joints, tested the stability. Then he broke into a wide, surprised smile. "Who made this?" Kenji bowed slightly. "Sir, I did. You're so young." "Very well done. I'll recommend you to everyone I know." The door closed behind the client, and Kenji stood there alone in the workshop. Then he cried, but not the way he cried months ago. This time they were tears of victory, of growth, of a young man finally breaking through his own limits. When Teda returned and saw the completed table, he placed his hand on Kenji's shoulder and said, "I only showed the path. You are the one who walked it." Kenji lowered his head. For the first time in his life, he felt enough. Persistent enough, capable enough to carry his family and himself toward a better future. When the real enemy appears, self-doubt. After finishing the table, Kenji thought the biggest challenge of his life was behind him, but life is never that simple. It doesn't only test the strength of your hands, it tests the steadiness of your heart. Tada returned to the workshop healthier, moving slowly, but still carrying the same gentle smile. He checked the joints, the symmetry, the polish of the table Kenji had made. "Well done, Kenji. Very well done." Just 3 simple words, but to Kenji they felt like an invisible medal placed around his neck. Soon more work began coming in. Customers heard the rumors and started ordering. Some wanted simple stools. Others, with deeper pockets, requested bookshelves and large desks. A few came only to see whether the young craftsman was as skilled as people claimed. Kenji worked non-stop, sharpening in the mornings, sawing in the afternoons, sanding late into the night. Tada would watch him quietly and occasionally redound. No one is chasing you, but Kenji wasn't listening. He was afraid of disappointing customers, afraid of disappointing Tadas, afraid of becoming that poor, helpless boy again who could provide for his family, afraid of being not enough. Then one day Kenji made a mistake. A wealthy customer ordered a large bookshelf. Kenji insisted on doing it alone, too confident, too rushed. He made a small angle, off by only a few millimeters. But in carpentry, a few millimeters can destroy an entire structure. When he assembled the frame, a plank tilted. The whole structure leaned awkwardly. Kenji froze, his hands tightening, sweat sliding down his spine. How could I mess up something so simple? Tada walked over, rested his hand on the misaligned board, then calmly asked, "Where did you go wrong?" Kenji lowered his head. "I measured the angle wrong because I hurried." "And why did you hurry?" Kenji hesitated. "Because I wanted to do it fast. I wanted to prove I could." Tada sighed, not in disappointment, but like some who finally saw the real wound beneath the surface. "Who are you trying to prove yourself to?" Kenji stayed silent. Tada continued, voice slow but firm, like a chisel carving truth directly into wood. "Ganbaru doesn't mean trying to become someone else. Ganbaru means persisting, become yourself but better. 1 inch at a time." Kenji looked up. The old man placed a steady hand on his shoulder. "Your biggest enemy isn't the job, nor the customers, it's the voice inside you that doubts who you are." A different kind of pain, the pain of the mind. That night, Kenji sat alone in the workshop. The wind outside was stronger than usual. The rustling leaves sounded like whispers from the past. He looked at his calloused hands, at the scars earned from every moment he refused to give up. Then he remembered Tada's words. Ganbaru isn't about speed. It's about continuing, even when you're trembling. And the thought that awakened him wasn't a philosophical line, but a simple, humbling question. If I survived the days when hunger nearly knocked me down, if I survived the days I thought I wouldn't make it, how can I be afraid of a tiny mistake like this? He stood up, measured the boards, cut each piece, realigned every joint. If he failed, he corrected. If he got tired, he rested a moment, then kept going. No rushing, no proving. Just a quiet, persistent Kenji who finally understood. A craftsman's beauty isn't perfection. It's the courage to fix the work and fix oneself day after day. The bookshelf was completed with calm determination. The customer arrived, inspected each corner, then nodded. No dramatic praise, no grand reward, just a simple. But to Kenji that was enough. He no longer felt the need to run, no need to prove anything. He just needed to continue. And that is the true essence of Ganbaru. The awakening of a man, when belief returns. As time passed, Kenji slowly became the second heartbeat of the workshop. He was no longer the trembling boy from that freezing morning in 1993. No longer the child slumped in front of his house whispering, "I can't do this." No longer the young man terrified of disappointing every customer who walked through the door. Kenji began to truly change. Not on the outside, but at the very root of who he was. Patience, something Kenji never thought he would have in the past. Kenji only knew how to rush. Every fear in him was born from hurry. Fear of not earning enough, fear of disappointing his mother, fear of his siblings going hungry, fear of being useless, fear of not being good enough. But the moment Tada entrusted the workshop to him, something shifted. Kenji began learning the beauty of slowing down. Instead of trying to finish a plank quickly, he observed the grain of the wood. Instead of fearing mistakes, he accepted them and fixed them. Instead of trying to prove himself to the world, he focused on being better than he was yesterday. He realized patience isn't waiting. Patience is staying calm when things haven't happened yet. His hands' eyes sharpened. His breathing deepened. Ken was growing high. Kenji's first customers, who came just for him one day, a man walked into the shop and said, "I want the young craftsman to make mine." Just one sentence, but it made Kenji's heart beat differently. People trusted him. They saw something in him that he had never seen in himself. Value, he made chairs, small shelves, beautifully crafted, luxurious. Not extravagant, but careful, warm, and full of sincerity. One elderly woman who bought a small box, "Lovely. Your hands made this with heart. I can feel it." That night, Kenji stayed in the workshop long after closing, just looking at his calloused hands. Hands that once trembled with fear now brought comfort to others. A small home slowly becoming full again. Not long after, Kenji came home with larger bags of rice than ever before. His mother cried the moment she saw them. His siblings jumped with joy. His grandmother gently touched the bags and said, "Heaven has blessed this home." But Kenji knew the truth. It wasn't luck. It was the days his hands bled, the nights he worked until he could barely stand, the moments he almost gave up. All of that brought him to this point. A day where he could finally bring food home. A day where he no longer felt like a burden. A day where warmth returned to his chest, born what Tada said. And the moment Kenji finally understood, one evening, after finishing work, Tada sat outside the workshop drinking tea. He handed Kenji a cup. "Kenji, do you know why I chose you?" Kenji shook his head. Tada spoke slowly. "Because I saw something in your eyes that many people today have lost. The ability to stand up after pain." Kenji lowered his gaze. Tada continued, "Anyone can quit when they're hurting. But moving forward while hurting, that is the mark of a real man." In that moment, the world seemed to fall silent. All the lessons, the struggles, the tears, the victories, they suddenly aligned into one clear truth. Ganbaru isn't about being fearless or flawless. Ganbaru is continuing. Even when your hands shake, your heart stings, and your mind doubts itself. And Kenji finally understood. Strength isn't found where you win, it's found where you refuse to quit. Numb Kenji, no longer a weak boy, but a man who stands tall that night. Kenji looked at his calloused hands. He no longer saw them as ugly or shameful. He saw the resilience in every scar, the rise in every cut, the growth in every moment he almost gave up. He smiled. A small smile, but deep the path he had walked. Kenji wasn't rich. He was no power. He didn't need applause. He had something far more valuable, belief in himself. A belief built from pain, from mistakes, from persistence, and from a journey called Ganbaru. Part-time, the greatest challenge. The greatest challenge in life is not the mountain standing in your way. It is the storm raging inside you. Most people fail not because the world is too harsh, but because their own fear, hesitation, and self-doubt quietly defeat them long before reality ever does. When you decide to change your life, the first enemy you will face is not society, not your family, not the circumstances around you. Is your old self, the version of you that loves comfort, avoids risk, and fears stepping into the unknown. That old version will whisper, "Just stay the same. What if you fail? You're not good enough." People will laugh at you, and if you listen to it, even just once, your dreams will begin to fade. Every person who becomes successful must go through this inner battle. A battle against procrastination, laziness, fear, insecurity, and doubt. It is a silent war, but it determines everything. The truth is, life only changes when you dare to challenge yourself more than you fear discomfort. The moment you choose to do things you've never done, read the books you once avoided, wake up earlier than you want to, speak up when you're scared, learn even when you're tired, that is the moment life begins to open a new path for you. And always remember, the greatest challenge is not defeating others, but defeating the weaker version of yourself. Because once you conquer your inner world, the outer world no longer has the power to shake you. Part 2, the turning point that changes your life. There is a truth that very few people realize. Your life doesn't change because of big dramatic moments. It changes because of one small but decisive choice, a moment of clarity, a minute of courage. A single different decision can open the door to an entirely new journey. A turning point in life doesn't happen when you suddenly have a lot of money, a wide network, or unexpected luck. A real turning point happens when you decide to take responsibility for your own life. No blaming, no excuses, no waiting for someone to save you, and no relying on anyone to lead the way. Many people fail not because they lack talent, but because they never dare to say one simple sentence to themselves: "From today onward, I will live differently." A life-changing turning point often comes from very ordinary moments. A morning when you ask yourself, "If I keep living like this, what will my life look like in 5 years?" A moment you realize no one will take responsibility for you. A moment you grow tired of repeating the same mistakes. A day you no longer want to be a victim of circumstances. From that moment on, you begin to shift direction. You read more, learn more, argue less, spend less, cut off meaningless socializing, change your habits, expand your mindset, rebuild your discipline, and recreate yourself starting from the smallest things. You don't need to be perfect to change. You just need to start. Because life only needs one person brave enough to begin to completely shift an entire destiny. And the most beautiful truth is this: once you change your direction, even by just one small degree, your entire future becomes different. Part completed table. The table was finally finished. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't glossy. It wasn't as refined as the work of veteran craftsmen. But every cut, every stroke of sanding, every grain of wood carried Kenji's sweat, his perseverance, and even the dried blood on his fingertips. It wasn't just a table. It was Kenji's heart carved into every piece of wood. A creation built not from natural talent, but from Ganbaru. The spirit of pushing forward no matter how hard it gets. The spirit of never giving up. When the customer arrived, he walked slowly around the table, running his hand across the surface. He tapped the legs, checked each joint, each detail. Kenji stood still, his heart pounding like it wanted to break out of his chest. Then the customer smiled. A real smile. Not polite, not forcedly. "This is the work of a master." Kenji froze. He bowed, barely believing what he'd heard. Him still very young. The customer placed a hand on Kenji's shoulder. "Age doesn't make a master. Spirit does." When the door closed behind the customer, Kenji stood alone in the workshop. The world suddenly felt silent. It was just him and the table. He cried. But this time they weren't tears of defeat. They weren't the cries of someone who felt powerless. They were tears of victory. The tears of someone who endured pain and kept moving forward. Someone who continued even when everything seemed impossible. For the first time, Kenji truly understood the meaning of Ganbaru. You don't need perfection. You just need a heart that refuses to give up. Part Memo returns. A few weeks later, once his health had recovered, Mr. Teda returned to the workshop. The moment he stepped inside, he stopped and stood silently. In front of him was the finished table. Sturdy, balanced, full of soul. Not the work of an inexperienced teenager, but of someone who had grown through hardship. Kenji rushed toward him. "Sir, I was afraid I would disappoint you." Teda looked at the 18-year-old boy with gentle eyes, the kind that carried a lifetime of stories. He walked forward, placed his hand on the surface of the table, then turned to Kenji. He smiled. "It wasn't because of me, Kenji. It was because of you." Kenji lowered his head, overwhelmed. He had never imagined he was capable of something so meaningful, but in Teda's eyes, he had truly changed. Teda continued, "A teacher can show the path, the one who walks it is always you." The words fell softly, yet echoed deeply inside Kenji's heart. Because that is the truth of growth. A teacher can hand you the lantern, but you must walk through the night. A teacher can give you hope, but you must fight your own despair. A teacher can teach you skills, but character and resilience, only you can build them. That day, Kenji saw not only pride in Teda's eyes, but an unwavering trust, something no one had ever given him before. And in that moment, he realized something profound. Ganbaru isn't born from a teacher's lessons. Ganbaru is born the moment you choose not to quit. Part Meba, the science behind Ganbaru. Many people think Ganbaru is just a Japanese motivational phrase, a mindset for staying positive. But the truth is, modern science fully supports it. Ganbaru isn't wishful thinking. Ganbaru is the biological mechanism of growth. Growth mindset psychologists explain that people who persist, who keep going even when everything seems impossible, are not necessarily stronger, smarter, or luckier. They simply possess something called a growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed, skills can be learned, a person can improve day by day, and most importantly, failure is not the end. Ganbaru is the essence of this mindset. Not giving up even when the situation looks hopeless. The brain forms new neural connections when overcoming challenges. Neuroscience shows that when a person faces difficulty and chooses to keep going, the brain begins creating new neural connections. Just like muscles strengthen through resistance, the brain grows through adversity. Every time you face pain, your brain adapts. Every time you push through fear, your brain strengthens. Every time you fall but stand up again, new neural pathways are built. These biological changes make you more resilient, more capable, and mentally stronger. But pain, the trigger for growth. A neuroscientist once said, "Pain is not the end. Pain is the beginning of transformation. A wound forces new skin to grow stronger. A challenge forces the spirit to harden. A moment of collapse forces persistence to be forged. When we experience pain, the brain is forced to adapt. When everything feels like it's falling apart, is when we grow the most." That is Ganbaru from a scientific perspective. Not meaningless suffering, but suffering that shapes us into a stronger version of ourselves. Part Reborn. Applying IT to your life. Now let's step away from Kenji's story for a moment and return to your life. The life of the person watching this video. You may not be living in Japan in 1939. You may not be fighting hunger after a war. But you have your own silent battles. Maybe you're carrying the weight of taking care of your family, waking up every day caught between responsibility and pressure. Maybe you're struggling to build a business, giving everything you have yet still not seeing results. Maybe you're pushing yourself through school or studies, racing against exams, against expectations, against your own fear of failure. Maybe you're dealing with mental and emotional pressure, the kind of burden no one sees, the quiet sadness, the constant worry, those nights when you stare at the ceiling wondering, will I have the strength to do this again tomorrow? And maybe there are mornings when you wake up feeling exactly like Kenji once did. I can't do this anymore. Be honest with yourself. Every one of us has moments when we want to give up. Not because we're weak, but because humans have limits, and life can be unbearably heavy. But here's the truth. That moment when you want to give up is not the end. It's a sign that you're standing at the edge of a breakthrough. Just like Kenji facing his unfinished table. Just like Teda standing in a ruined workshop after the war. Just like millions of people who stood before the same choice. Give up or Ganbaru, and you just like them are strong enough to choose Ganbaru for your own life. Part the core message. If we had to distill this entire story, Kenji's journey, his tears, his breaking points, and his rise, it would all come down to one simple truth that most people refuse to face. Strength doesn't come from being fearless. Strong people aren't those who stay calm at all times, who never tremble, who never feel overwhelmed. The truth is they do feel fear, confusion, and exhaustion just like everyone else. The only difference, they tremble. But they keep moving. Their hands may shake. Their knees may weaken. Their heart may pound with anxiety. But their feet still take one more step, even the smallest step forward, and that step taken in fear is the truest form of strength. Across cultures, religions, and generations, there's one principle that Ganbaru reminds us of again in a pain. No growth. Muscles grow only after they tear. Trees root deeper only after facing strong winds. And people become resilient only after confronting hardship. No one becomes stronger on easy days. No one grows from comfort. Everything that makes you powerful today was once something that hurt you, and Ganbaru in its deepest essence teaches one thing: pain is not a sign to quit. Pain is the signal that you're evolving. In the end, Kenji's story is not just the story of a 18-year-old boy after the war. It is the story of all of us. The people who are still fighting every day not to give up. Because the truth is, every one of us has stood at the edge of despair and resilience. Every one of us has had moments when life felt too heavy to carry, and every one of us has wished for a Teda to appear at the right moment and pull us back up. But the most important lesson Ganbaru teaches us is this: salvation doesn't come from someone else. It comes from your own choice. The choice to keep moving when you tremble but still take one more step, when you're exhausted but give it one more try, when you're hurting but refuse to give up in that very moment. You're rewriting your own destiny. Kenji didn't become a hero of the world. He simply became the hero of his family and of himself. And you can do the same. You don't need to be extraordinary to change your life. You just need to choose Ganbaru, to choose to rise every time life tries to knock you down. If this story touched you in any way, I invite you to subscribe to the Life Philosophy channel so you won't miss the next inspiring stories. Leave a like so the algorithm knows you want more positive content, and write just one word in the comments: Ganbaru. Because when you type it, you're making a promise to yourself. Don't give up. Thank you for staying until the end of the video. I'll see you in the next one, where together we continue the journey of becoming stronger versions of ourselves. Life Philosophy. Live deeply, live with purpose, live without giving up.